Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Dave, the Military Millionaire, and today I want to talk to you. Really, I've been working on this for a little while, and I want to release it here on YouTube so that you can get it all. I'm also going to have a free course, a completely free teachable course, where if you want to go through each module of this, each topic, a little bit in more detail, you can go there, and then you can pick the topics that you want to focus on, go through them, get a little bit more detail, and that'll be a good overarching explanation of personal finance for service members. Also, as always, I wrote this book, The No BS Guide to Military Life, which will go way more in depth on all of this. But I created this PowerPoint presentation because I realized a lot of people were reaching out to me asking me for presentations for their units or to talk to their Marines, sailors, airmen, soldiers, whatever, about personal finance. And I was like, man, I can't reach out to everybody. I can't go everywhere. It's weird to try to do a Zoom call into base. So I built this with the intent that it'll cover the basics of personal finance for service members, and it would be something that is going to be in a couple different mediums. So the first one's going to be this YouTube video that you found so that you can watch it online and get all the content for free. The second one, and you can share this, which I would love if you did, if you got something out of it, or subscribe or click the like button, all the normal stuff, right? All the cool stuff. But if you share it, then more people get this free, awesome information that I wish I had when I was younger. The second medium is going to be on Teachable, broken out by section with more detail for each slide so that people can really go in and kind of deep dive a little bit more into each topic and figure out, they don't have to watch the ones they don't care about or they're familiar with, and they can watch the ones that they want more information on. And the third medium is going to be what you're about to see, which is that this video is going to be a little bit odd in the fact that what I'm going to do is, as soon as this intro is done, you're going to see me pause for a second, and then I'm going to pretend that I'm giving this entire presentation to a unit, and then that presentation will be something that can be shown as a unit in a 45-minute to an hour time frame, where if somebody wants to give a presentation but they're really just not comfortable or confident with being in front of people or giving the information themselves, they can literally play this video and then ta-da, right? So we're going to do that right now. And this is, I haven't practiced this. This is go number one for this presentation. So you'll get to see how things go live and unscripted. Hey, what's up, guys? My name is David Perret, and I want to give you a little bit of background about who I am, what I do, and why you may or may not care about this course at all. I was an active duty Marine for 13 years. I just recently, as of recording this, joined the reserves to finish out the last few years in the Marine Corps. I've kind of been around the block. I was a motor T guy, 35, 31, 35, 37. I was also a recruiter for the Marine Corps for 3 years. Been stationed in Japan, Hawaii, San Diego twice, Missouri where I recruited. I've been Afghanistan in 2010. I've been a couple other countries here and there, Germany, Thailand, Kyrgyzstan, touch and goes here and there. Nothing super crazy, right? Normal, boring career with some exciting stuff interlaced in there. Really loved it, right? The Marine Corps has been awesome. And I didn't leave the Marine Corps for any other reason really than to pursue helping people with all of this. So 2015, I began getting a little bit more financial literate. I started buying real estate. And in 2015, I had a negative net worth, so I had no money, right? In fact, the only reason I was able to buy my first house is that my Harley got totaled, and I used the insurance money from that to be the down payment on my property because I didn't even know how to use the VA loan, so I used a different loan. And we're going to get into all that stuff. But in that 5.5-year span, I went from really bad financial situation to a millionaire and completely financially free. I own over 100 rental units, a hotel, 3 apartments, a lot of smaller rental properties, a partner on a big $9 million apartment deal, really small partnership. Built 6 figures into my TSP, wrote a book, and built a community helping service members and veterans. And I was like, you know what? I can reach a lot of people if I get out and take this full time. So here we go. All right, so this is about achieving financial freedom, and this is the basics. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk, oh, and by the way, thanks for letting me come to you and give this presentation, right? I hope you get something out of this. This is all information that I wish I had had when I first joined the military. All right. I'm not going to bore you by reading off the PowerPoint presentation. That's what we're going to cover, and now I'm going to dig in. What's in it for you? right? The WIFM. Everybody cares about this. Divorce, finances is like a huge reason that people get divorced. Also, a big reason people lose security clearances. And I didn't mention this earlier. I was a command financial specialist as well. So the Marine Corps taught me a lot about this to really improve my education and be able to help people with this. Financial freedom is great. It allows you to work when you want, where you want, on what you want, and really not be like a labor slave to anybody. And it really isn't that hard. It's just setting good habits and then sticking to them, right? So, and the more you know now and the more you do this at an earlier age, when you can afford to be a little bit more risky, and allow that compound interest to work long term, the more this will benefit you over the long haul. All right. I hate this subject, right? Budgeting is just not exciting. Nobody likes to talk about saving money. It's not exciting. It's not sexy. It doesn't get you that new Ferrari. But at the end of the day, if you spend everything you earn, then no matter how much money you earn, you're never going to be wealthy. That's why you get lawyers and doctors who make a ton of money and still struggle with financial freedom, because they've just kind of grown into those expenses over time, or they have social obligations, or they have to have the nice car and the nice house, and then they have kids, and then their wife spends, or their husband, or like, it is what it is, right? It's kind of a perpetual cycle, and we see it all the time, right? I can tell you, as a guy who's been around kind of all over the military segment, in and out of the military, there are high-level officers who are just as poor off as like lower-level enlisted as far as their finances, right? So this doesn't segregate by any kind of subsect of rank or income. So you need to know how to manage your money. Personally, and let me pull it out here. I like the envelope system, and I don't, admittedly, haven't done this as much lately as I should, but like, I'll set up a budget for dining out, a budget for lunch, and $160 a month for gas, or whatever that may be. And what I'll do is I'll pull that much out in cash at the beginning of the month. I'll stick it in these, and then I'll pay for things in cash. And you don't really have to track all your expenses. It's not complicated. You just know, hey, if I spend all my money for gas, then I either need to take it out of a different section, which is not ideal, but means that you're losing out there, or I need to find some solution that doesn't involve me driving right now. If I spent all my eating out money, then I don't get to go out and eat out until the next month. And as long as you don't overspend what you allotted for yourself, then you're good. And you can budget in there. I mean, I have a budget in there for alcohol. So if you want to have some drinks, like, whatever, right? So you just budget out what's reasonable. You give yourself that money, and then you invest everything else, or pay off your debt with everything else, and then you stick to that, right? And it doesn't have to be crazy, but you don't have to. It's just simple. It's not complex. You don't need to do all kinds of crazy tracking. You want to always pay yourself first. So that means, and a great book for this is The Richest Man in Babylon. Super simple read. But that ultimately means that you want to put money into investing before you do anything else. Because if you spend all this money and then you're like, oh, I'll invest what's left over, you'll never invest what's left over, because there won't be anything. But if you invest a little bit up front and then you spend all the money, you already invested. So long term, I like to tell people at least 10% of whatever you make. The easiest way to do that, we'll talk about it in a minute, is to just set it on your thrift savings plan. But there's a lot of other strategies too. So segment your cash. When you get promoted, let's say you get a 10% pay raise, invest all of that. If you were living on PFC pay and now you're a Lance Corporal, then maybe you invest the difference, and then that will expedite how much more you're saving because you were living on PFC pay. Or maybe you take half of whatever that pay raise is and you enjoy it, and half of it and you invest it. And that's how you kind of avoid that expense creep, right? And then, there's some cool tools for like budgeting and personal finance, but you don't need to get super crazy with this. This is one of my favorites, the thrift savings plan. This is one of those things where, like, if you max it out when you're like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, you could literally just leave this forever, and it would just keep building and compounding and earning interest until like you reach retirement age, and then your retirement's taken care of, which means you could afford to be a little bit more risky with your other investments because you've already got retirement covered. And then it also means that you could lay off a little bit and enjoy a little bit more of your income, or you keep the gas down and you retire that much better off in the long run. If you are a blended retirement system, which anyone who joined after 2018 is, then you absolutely need to contribute at least 5%, because the government is going to give you a 5% matching contribution, which means that if you contribute 5%, the government gives you another 5. That's literally a 100% return immediately. It's also, think about it as a 5% pay raise, except it'll be even more by the time you get to retirement, because you wouldn't get that 5% if you didn't contribute. So it's free money. Take it, at least 5%. I recommend 10 or really more at an earlier age. I maxed it out this year, my last year active duty. I put 19,500 in it, plus the matching contribution. It was actually like 21 or 22,000. And I've seen like 30-40% returns over the last 2 years. So that money has just absolutely skyrocketed. And my TSP, I view it as like my super emergency fund, where if everything else falls apart, I can pull that money if I have to. All right. It's really not that complicated. If you're a lower level enlisted or officer, really for most service members, I think it makes most sense to go with Roth, which means that you're paying the taxes up front, because you'll most likely be in a higher tax bracket later when you go and pull the money out. Your matching contribution will always go into the traditional, but your personal contributions can go into Roth. And then you're going to want to choose your fund allocation. A great book for this is called The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. Personally, I'm in 75% C fund, 25% S fund. I've also been at like 70% C, 20% S, and 10% I before. I've seen people do 50-50. Really, you need to do your own homework and decide what's best for your personal risk tolerance. But if you aren't going to do any of that, then just put it in the life cycle for whatever year you plan to begin retirement. So like if I was going to turn 60 in 2040, 2050, whatever that year is, then I should put it in the life cycle 2050 fund, and then that will automatically be more risky at a younger age and then grow into less risky as you get closer to retirement. It's a good solution. It's not as good as knowing what you're doing, but if you're not going to put the time and effort into it, you can just set it and forget it there, right? The important thing here is to understand that like $1 invested when you're 20 is worth 2 at 30, 8 at 50 years old, and then by the time you reach 60, that $1 is like $16 at just a 7% return. So if you get a better return, like the last few years where we got like 30, it's going to be exponentially more, which is why it's important to try to max this out now. Because like, let's say you do $10,000, you put into it when you're 18, and then by the time you're 60, it's like $160,000, right? So that adds up very quickly, especially when you're adding more money into the equation and contributing for a longer period of time. If you would max that out at 20,000, that's like 320 by the time you retire. So if you do that for like 4 years, that's over $1 million in your retirement account, which is awesome. So that's why I like the TSP. And it's simple. You don't have to think about it. It comes automatically out of your paycheck. I like to, every time I get a pay raise or a promotion, I would increase my TSP allocation by 1 or 2%. That way I'm always putting at least part of those pay raises into investing. And this is like the simplest way to pay yourself first. You can take a loan from your TSP. I don't usually recommend this unless you have some great opportunity or some really big hardship. But you can do it. You can pull up to half of your amount out of your TSP, or 50%, or 50,000, whichever is greater. And then you have to repay that, but not my favorite thing, just because let's say you have to repay it at 2%. So you're like, oh, it's only 2% interest. But if over the time you're repaying that, if the market earned 30%, you actually paid like 32% interest because, or 28% interest, because you lost out on that 30% interest that you would have gotten if you had just left the money there. So in that regard, often it's better to take another loan than to use a TSP loan, but really just depends. TSP is awesome. Definitely contribute. All right. Building your credit. This is often overlooked when it comes to like personal finance, because again, it's just not super sexy. But if you don't have credit, right, like no credit at all, or you have bad credit, it's going to hurt for when you go to buy a house or buy investments or rent or buy a car or get a credit card, take out a personal loan. Like anything you do that involves a credit report is going to be more expensive and more difficult to qualify for if you don't do this. So this is a great foundational building block. I recommend you go to annualcreditreport.com, pull a free credit report, read through it, and look for errors. You're looking for things that aren't your account that are on there. You're looking for credit cards that you don't have that are on there, or payments or whatever. And if there's things that you owe that are at creditors, like pay them off, get them off, or if you didn't do it, dispute it. If you have overdue payments, fix it. You want to pay all of your payments on time. You want to pay all of your bills on time. You never want to miss a payment. You never want to miss any of that, especially not for 90 days where it really starts hitting your credit. And then say you open a credit card when you're 18, and then you open another one when you're 22, and you're like, I don't use this one when I'm 18. At least keep it. Even if you don't use it at all, don't close it out, because that 18, the one you got when you were 18, has a 4-year longer credit history than the new one. And the longer you have credit for, the more reputable you are. So if you close out that 18 one, then all of a sudden your credit report will show you have 1 year of credit history. But if you maintain that one, no matter what else you do, then at least you'll still have that 4 or 5 year credit history, which ultimately is valuable as far as credit history goes. So I closed out a Star card at a young age, and I shouldn't have, because it was my longest credit history card. It took me a while to recoup that age and build that credit back up. It actually hurt my credit to close that card. All right, credit utilization. Let's say you owe, or you have a $10,000 limit on a card. If you, or five, we'll do five. $5,000 limit at a card, and you owe $1,000. That's a 20%. You've used 20% of the credit, right? 1,000, 5,000. And so having a balance, let's say you were at 2,500, that's 50% credit utilization. That's going to hurt your credit because you've used up so much of it. And so if you can either pay down the card, which is ideal, or another hack, as long as you're not going to use the extra, is you can ask for a larger credit limit. So if you had a 5,000, you dump it to 10,000. Now that 2,500 is a 25% credit utilization instead of 50%, right? So that's kind of ways you can tweak it, but don't ask for more credit if you're going to spend it. With credit cards, you always want to pay it off. You want to pay down debt strategically, so whichever one has the highest utilization rate, right? So if you've got a $3,000 credit card and you owe $2,000 on it, pay that one off before a $10,000 credit card that you owe $2,000 on, because the $3,000 limit is a higher credit utilization rate. So pay that one off first and then pay off the other one. If you have no credit, you can do, like, you can get your parents to like co-sign on a card with you, or you can get a card where it's like a prepaid credit card where you have to pay a balance onto it and then you can use it to build credit. They call them secured cards. So just some different ways to build credit. You definitely want to have credit. Having no credit at all is actually really bad when you go to buy a house or whatever, or invest in things that require debt. And debt is, if used properly, can be a very valuable way to help build wealth. So having credit is really, really beneficial. So you should at least have a decent credit score, even if you don't use your card. I mean, if you don't like credit cards, get one and like buy 1 tank of gas and pay it off immediately. Don't use it for anything else. Leave it at home. And then if you do that every month, you know, your credit score will go up, but you don't have the risk of credit cards and stuff like that. So, all right. Speaking of credit cards, use it at least monthly, like we talked about. Pay it off completely every month. You don't want to have a revolving like amount on there. You can ask for a bigger credit limit, but again, only if you trust yourself not to overspend. Don't max out your cards. It's not good for credit. It's also a bad financial habit. You pay a ton of interest on that money. Don't spend more than you can pay off. So use your credit card for like points and for credit, but don't use your credit card to buy things you can't actually afford. So don't have a rolling balance. If you have balances on multiple, don't apply for a new card. Pay those ones off and reuse them, right? Make sure you don't put yourself in a situation where you have like 5 maxed out credit cards. And then again, like we talked about, don't close out your oldest one. Oh, the number of scary things I've seen with service members, right? So, I mean, and this one's like, when we talk scary, like this is scary. I've seen people with like 20-30% interest rates on new cars. That's insane. Don't do it, right? So new cars are going to lose at least, or on average, 60% of their value in the first 5 years you own it. So you bought a, I don't know, a $100,000 car. It's most likely only going to be worth like $40,000 in 5 years, which means that you're paying $60,000 off on a car that isn't worth it anymore. You're also paying interest on that, so it's losing value. That's just not it's not a winning proposition. So buy a car that's like 5 to 10 years old, where it's already lost most of that value and kind of steadied out, and you'll be in a much better financial position. Or buy a car cash, Toyotas and Lexus, or Toyota Lexus, like they hold their value the best, followed by like Subaru, Jeep, Honda. Tesla actually does really well, but the data isn't really hasn't been around long enough to justify putting it above Toyota. But it is, they do seem to hold their value pretty well. And then keep your car maintained, keep it clean, the best strategy as it is here is to buy a 5 to 10 year old used car with lower mileage, service records, and then shop for the best financing. So don't just take the dealer's financing. Maybe go to your bank, maybe pay for it cash. Look for good financing. You don't want to go past a 5 year note on a car, because if you go 6, 7, 8, they're going for that because they know it lowers your payment and you'll buy a more expensive car, which is bad. And you don't want to be paying, I don't think, more than 5% interest on a car. But if your credit's not great, you might have to pay a little bit more. Definitely don't go over 10 or 15%. If you have to go 10 or 15% interest on a car, then find another way to finance it, or don't buy a car. Especially if you're in the barracks. Like if you're in the barracks, just mooch rides off friends, Uber, whatever. You don't have to have a car right away. And I say all this, I'm not some Scrooge McDuck. Like, I owned like 5 cars in my first enlistment: a truck, a Harley, 2 or 3 ship boxes, a Honda S2000 that I turboed and did all kinds of stuff. Like, I'm a car guy. I mean, that's my thing. I've probably owned 10 or 15 cars in the last decade. I fully intend on owning a supercar one of these days, but it's all about buying the vehicles the right way, right? So you can't just go out and buy a junky car or a super high-end car. Buy something reliable that's going to work for you, that's not going to break the bank. Real estate's actually how I built the vast majority of my net worth and my wealth and my cash flow. So I'm a huge real estate guy. I'm going to try not to go out on a super crazy tangent about this, but housing's the biggest expense for most Americans. So if you have BAH, I highly recommend that you do what's called house hacking, which is where you buy like a 2 to 4 unit house, like a duplex or triplex or fourplex, and then you rent other units out to people so that they can cover your mortgage. Or you can rent like a single family house and rent bedrooms, or you can do both. This could be like you live in a little unit in the garage or rent the rest of the house, but it doesn't have to be crazy. Like, you could buy a fourplex, live in one unit with your wife or alone or with friends, or rent out rooms or whatever. Rent the other 3 units. And let's say each of the other units rents for $1,000 a month. That's $3,000. And let's say your mortgage is $2,500. Well, they're paying for your mortgage and your utilities, and you're getting to live in the house for free. And then when you move out and you rent your unit, now you're getting paid to own that house. So you learn how to be a landlord. You're going to benefit from tax advantages. You're going to benefit from a lot of stuff, but you're also going to get to keep your BAH, which is tax exempt, which is awesome. And then you can take that money, reinvest it, and you can exponentially increase the amount you're going to get towards financial freedom. You're going to want to buy in good school districts, good locations, but you don't want to go overly fancy. You should only buy a house, I think, if it's going to be something that works as a good cash flowing rental property, or if it's somewhere you plan on living again or want to retire, like long-term home, right? Don't be buying properties and just hoping that the market goes up and you make money on it. It needs to be something that makes sense, either super long-term for you or as an investment when you move out and relocate. Look for ways to add value, update stuff, but don't overdo it. And then when you PCS, take a look at how much equity you have in the home if it went up in value and what you paid down on it against what it'll possibly cash flow, and decide if you're going to rent it or sell it when you move. And I'm happy to help you with some of that, but it's a little complex for this presentation. All right, I'm going to start the slide over. I hope there's no weird cut there, but while I was midway through recording this slide for y'all, one of the people painting my garage fell off a ladder, had to call an ambulance. Nothing life-threatening, but still kind of had to handle the situation. So it is what it is. I guess that's why you need life insurance. Ta-da! No. Look, so ultimately at a young age, SGLI is completely sufficient. You don't need whole life insurance, right? If somebody's trying to sell you whole life insurance, there's some companies that do this, like First Command is one that's kind of notorious. In fact, they're not even allowed to talk to anyone until they're at E5, kind of because of the reputation. But Whole life insurance isn't something you need. It's not an investment vehicle. It's a saving vessel. The only time it really makes sense is if you can overfund it, meaning you throw like 100 grand at it right away. I had one of these policies for like 4 years, put a significant amount of money into my policy, and had like nothing to show for it. It takes a long time to build it up. Yes, it mitigates losing money like bonds, but the upside is just not there. You're not going to benefit from like you'd be better off getting a term policy, which is very affordable, and then investing the rest in like an index fund or TSP or whatever. That's what I do. My wife and I each have a $500,000 policy now that I'm out of the military, and it's very affordable, like less than $50 a month for both of us combined, and we invest the rest, right? And ultimately, that's the right answer for 95% of the people, maybe even more like 99. But just knowing the difference, whole life is like until you die, no matter what. And they kind of, there's like this movement right now to say it's an investment strategy when it's really not an investment strategy. It's a savings and death benefit strategy. Term life covers you until a certain age with the expectation that after that age, you will have your finances, your retirement covered enough that you don't need it anyway. The best life insurance is self-insurance, meaning you and your family have enough money that it doesn't really matter. So just know that, right? So I'm a big buy term, invest the rest. You don't need to get insurance until you're getting closer to EAS. I would definitely say you get a policy or figure out what policy and do all the medical stuff before your disability claim is done. So as you're going to EAS, if you claim a whole bunch of stuff, then all of that has to be on your medical stuff for your insurance policy, and it'll be more expensive. If you get insurance before you do your disability claim, hey, none of that stuff's, you don't know what you'd have, so, it is what it is, so it'll be less expensive. VGLI is an option for those getting out of the military, but it progressively gets more expensive as you get older, and it gets to where it's extremely expensive. So it might work for a younger person for a while, but if you're older, it's probably not worthwhile. Really just depends on your own personal needs, right? So don't go get sold insurance. Go shopping for insurance. Know what you're getting into, know what you're looking for, and that's what I got to say on that. All right, side hustles. If you want to make some extra income, here's some good ways to do it. There's a lot of these going around. You'll see people doing woodworking, making plaques, mounting medals, stuff on base. You can drive for Uber or Lyft on the weekends if your command is cool with it. You can build a business, right? I started building my business and doing real estate investing while I was in. Index funds is great because you just contribute the money every month. It earns a return. You don't have to do anything. It takes no time. Probably the best dollar per hour. Little thought, little effort. But side hustles are a good way to build some extra income, I would say. And I have some content on like a list of like 45, 50 side hustles. I would just say that if you're going to do the side hustles, it is worth your time to take all the money you make from that and invest it. Don't use it as additional income that you spend. Use it as investment only income. That's how you build wealth. All right, I'm going to run through this real quick. Long story short, a bond, you're not going to lose money. It's got backed by the government. It's secured, but they have a very minimal upside. Index fund is basically like a total stock market index. So like VTSAX is a Vanguard fund that I use, and I'm not promoting that one. I'm just saying it is an example. Again, read Simple Path to Wealth if you want to know more about index funds. But that fund is invested in the total stock market. So instead of being in one company, it's invested in all of them. And so you're betting on the entire economy of private businesses and public businesses rather than just on individual company to do well. Mutual fund is very similar, but it's managed by somebody. Stocks, individual stocks. Crypto is a newer and fairly more complicated blockchain technology and all that stuff. Bitcoin, Ethereum are the buzzwords, but there's a lot that goes into this. Do your own research. It's very volatile and still very new to the marketplace, so a lot of learning to be done about the best investment strategies with it. Traditional and Roth IRA are similar to the TSP, just on the civilian side. I actually recommend having a Roth IRA as well, if not maxing that out before. Then a 401k is another investment savings for retirement. Okay, real quick, I just like to touch on these 3 terms that are worth knowing: the time value of money, opportunity cost, and velocity of money. So time value is how much your money will be worth. If invested, so $100 invested now will be worth $1,600 when you're 60. Opportunity cost means that every $100 you don't invest now is $1,600 you don't have later. So that's a good way to think of things when you're like, I'm going to go buy this $100 pair of shoes. And you're like, well, I don't need those shoes. Maybe $1,600 later. Let me invest it instead. And then the velocity of money. So the faster your money compounds and the faster your money comes back to you, the more it's going to grow exponentially. So the faster you can keep your money moving and coming back to you and earning those returns. So for example, a 10% return over a year is great, but if you can get that same 10% return in 6 months, then your money will double twice as fast as if you were to earn that 10% return in 6 months and then or in a year. Conversely, if you earn that 10% return in 6 months and then you don't do anything with your money for another year, and then you earn another 6% or 10% in like 3 months, well, you've actually earned less interest than you would if you left it at 10% for just 2 years. So understanding that like the more time in the market, the more your money grows. That's the magic of compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world, according to Albert Einstein. Here's a quick graph. So $1,000, 10% interest becomes 1,100, and then it's 10% on that 1,100. So now it's 110 added to it. So 1210, 1331, 2594. And so this is what creates that like exponential graph, right, where things grow very quickly. So compound interest is wonderful, and you want to leave your money working continually so that you are earning compound interest rather than just earning a return and then pulling your money out. Okay, I like to keep things really simple. Dollar cost averaging is exactly what the TSP forces you to do. This means that you invest the same amount every month, and you don't worry about if the market went up or down, because if you invest $6 here, you buy more shares, and if you invest $6 here, you buy less shares, but they're more valuable, and it averages out over time. This is the easiest and simplest and my favorite way to invest rather than trying to only buy at the bottom, because timing the market is just 90% of the time, if you try to time the market, you're going to lose overall. You're going to have additional fees from trading more. You're going to miss the bottom. You're going to, this is why I don't like day trading and Forex and all these things, is because you're paying short-term capital gains tax. You're paying more in taxes. You're paying more in transactional fees because you're making more transactions. And then you're trying to time the market, which is just, nobody can do that. It's not a real thing. Over time, leaving your money in the market is better. So long-term over short-term, better risk, better tax implications. Stick to index funds over mutual funds most of the time, because index funds are not professionally managed. They're total market funds or total section of market funds. And so they have much lower fees, and those fees will ultimately eat away at your return over the long haul. Investing in crypto, I'm going to just leave that there because I don't want to give you advice just because the market's so young on that. But when they start having crypto index funds, that'll be awesome, and I'll probably dive into that. I do invest in crypto. It's a very small, maybe 1% of my net worth portion of my portfolio. I've done fairly well with it, but I still view it as a very risky investment strategy because there's no way to know what it's really going to be doing, right? So, and individual stocks, right? I'm not a huge day trader fan, but you can definitely do well picking individual companies. But just remember that, like, over the last 40 years, something like 80% of the Fortune 500 companies are no longer on the Fortune 500 list, right? Meaning that even really big companies change out. New industries come, new companies take over. Just food for thought, right? You never really know what the future is going to look like, no matter how much you research. Okay, now I'm a huge fan of real estate. This could be my super brief overview. I have so much more information on real estate investing. I even have a small course about it, but you don't need to buy that. I have, in fact, I wouldn't. If you're just starting out, right, I would focus on reading books and listening to podcasts and free education, getting around people who are doing it. Getting a Facebook group like mine where people are talking about this stuff. So. House hacking is what we talked about earlier, and I'm going to dig into it a little bit more in a moment. And then buy and hold real estate is holding rental properties for long term for cash flow. You're going to benefit from that cash flow. You benefit from tenants paying down your mortgage, from the property going up in value, and from tax advantages. It builds that long term wealth, but you have to buy the right rentals, right? House flipping, it's the sexy stuff you see on HGTV. You buy a really crappy house, you make it really nice, makes great Instagram photos. There's a lot more risk involved in this. It's not super easy. There's more fees and funds in it than HGTV wants you to believe. It's just a little bit more work than the other options, and so it's active, right? You will earn a good amount of money, but you have to be on top of the ball with that, with contractors and renovations and a lot of stuff. I've lost money doing this. I've also made money doing this. Wholesaling is where you go and you find properties at a discount by going and talking to the seller directly, and maybe they're about to go into foreclosure or something, so you get the property super cheap, and then turning around and selling it to somebody who's going to flip it or hold it for a long term, and you make a little bit of money on that transaction. It's a good strategy, but you are going to still need like marketing and sales skills, and you're probably going to need to spend money on marketing. So it's not like a get in it for free thing. It takes work, right? It's a full-on business if you want to be good at it. House hacking. I love this, right? It allows you to live for free or close to it, even in expensive markets. I've seen people in California do this for free. When I lived in California last, I had a 4-bed, 3-bath house, and I rented 2 of the bedrooms out on Airbnb, and then eventually 1 to a friend and 1 on Airbnb. And my rent was, I rented the house. I didn't even buy the house. So you got to make sure your landlord's cool with that if you're going to do that route. But I rented the house for $3,000 a month, and between Airbnb and my buddy, I was bringing in $2,500. And when they were both Airbnb'd, I was bringing in around $3,000 to $3,500. And so I was living for free when they were both Airbnb'd. When I was with my buddy, I was paying like $500 a month, but I was collecting all of my BAH, and then I was taking that and reinvesting it. It's a lot less scary to buy a house that you're going to live in than it is to buy a straight up investment property, right? So for that first purchase, I like this because buying a fourplex, still buying a house, so it's not like scary. Whereas buying a long distance investment, people might try to talk you out of that. You're going to gain landlord experience and decide if you like real estate. You're going to get to save that money and reinvest it, right? Reinvest just like side hustles. And then if done correctly, it'll cash flow when you move out and you'll build wealth, right? I love house hacking. And you can do this with a VA loan for zero out of pocket with great terms on fixed rate 30-year debt. And it's just awesome. Speaking of the VA loan, it's almost like I planned out where I wanted that to come in. Look, so you can buy up to 4 units with a VA loan. There's a subsection in the guideline that says you can buy more than that if you partner with a veteran. I've never seen it successfully done, so for now we're going to leave it here. You're still going to need to budget 2 to 3% of the purchase price for closing costs. You can get those covered by the seller or by there's other options, but just budget for it. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, right? There's no limit to the purchase price on your original purchase. To put this in perspective, I have seen a young, he was a captain, now major, purchase a $1.93 million duplex on Venice Beach. I don't necessarily recommend that, but he rented the other side to cover almost all of his mortgage, and when he moves out, it'll break even while he's got a house on Venice Beach. So super cool. I've seen people do expensive fourplexes. I've also seen people do very affordable properties. So this is why I like house hacking, because it allows you to get into a more expensive property and still have other people paying your mortgage so that the risk isn't all on you. It's the lowest interest rate you're going to find. I mean, obviously your personal finances are going to play into that, your credit score, how much cash you have, how risky you are as a buyer. But generally speaking, the VA loan has a better interest rate than anything else out there. It doesn't have private mortgage insurance or mortgage insurance at all. There's a funding fee. It's waived if you're 10% disabled or have a Purple Heart. It's also really not that bad. So the funding fee gets rolled into the loan. It still costs you less than paying mortgage insurance like you would on any other low down payment conventional loan. So it's still a better option. You can use it multiple times. So far, I think the record I've seen is 4 different VA loans in different locations. It's really going to depend on your entitlement. Like if you buy in San Diego and buy $1 million house, you're not going to be able to use VA loan again somewhere else until you sell that or refinance out of it. But if you buy like a $200,000 house and then you move somewhere else and buy another $200,000 house, like your entitlement would allow that. So lots of if this, then that. So happy to answer some of those questions. If you got them, hit me up. Happy to introduce you to people who understand the VA loan that are professionals. But it is what it is. It's a great option out there. I think it's the best mortgage product out there. All right, real quick. This is, if I was to boil it all down, financial freedom plan, right? So you want to earn the matching contributions. You want to contribute at least that 5% to TSP before you do anything else. That 5% contribution is an instant 100% return, guaranteed money. It's a bonus that you don't get if you don't do it. and it is just, I mean, well, you're all service members. I can say this. You're an idiot if you don't take it, right? Like, it's free money. Take the 5%. Put 5% in the TSP. Take that money. Now, you're going to want to build a 1-month emergency fund, meaning you put enough money in a savings account to cover at least 1 month of all of your expenses, right? Then pay off all your bad debt. So if you have credit card debt, focus all your money into paying that off. If you have, really expensive interest payment on a car, pay that off. If your interest on your car is like 2 or 3%, probably don't need to rush to pay that off. I still have loans on my cars because I earn more money investing elsewhere than I do paying off the car. But, again, I've got some great resources talking about debt pay down that are free. So happy to, check those out, and they'll help you figure out which debts to pay off first to really help yourself out. But after you've built that 1-month emergency fund, pay off debt, then you want a house hack. I think this is great. If you have BAH, awesome. If you don't have BAH or you're a veteran or whatever, if you can buy a house, house hacking is great. Phenomenal way to boost yourself into the next level for wealth, and then save $10,000 in cash reserves, because even if your tenants are paying off all of your mortgage, save that BAH or whatever you would have been paying on housing until you have at least 10 grand, because and 20, it could be a little bit more depending on where you live. Like, it's not going to hurt to have more, but 10,000 just means, like, if a laundry, washer goes out and a fridge goes out, or if a water heater or a furnace goes out, or, basically any of the major appliances, you're covered. And if a roof goes out, most places, depending on cost, you can probably still fix that for about 10,000. So this just covers, like, what if you buy a house for $0 down and then all of a sudden water heater goes out? You don't have any money for it. That's not a fun place to be, right? So building up that cash reserves just means that if something happens with the house, you're covered. And then you want to build out a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. So we built the 1 month earlier. Safe bet is to then build out 3 to 6 months. That way you're covered in case anything goes wrong. Now, I will tell you that I have done this the wrong way, quote unquote. A lot of people don't like this. Instead of building that 6-month emergency fund, I just made sure I had a credit card with enough of a balance to cover the 6 months, and I left it with no money on it, right? So that way, if an emergency came up, I could swipe the card and then pay it off very quickly. That's not a great way to do it, but it's a good way to do it while you're building that emergency fund. And then once you build that emergency fund, maximize your TSP contributions and a Roth IRA, right? That's like 19 as in 2021, 19,500 you can contribute to TSP, and like 6,500 to Roth IRA. So that's $26,000 that you can contribute, which will be very tax advantaged in the future and will grow and grow and grow and grow. And right, if you at a 7% interest rate, that money will double about every 10 years. So 60 years down the road, 26,000 becomes, math in public if it's 40 years, right? So 52,000, 104, 208, 416. Every year you max that out is like $400,000 that you'll have in retirement. So you do that for like 4 years, your retirement's totally covered, right? So that's a very valuable way to do it. Then I say invest in whatever your preferred niche is, right? Some people really love just going all in on index funds. I like index funds. I have index funds for both my kids. I went all in on real estate because I had a team. I like how you can leverage, meaning I can put 15 or 20% or 25% down on a property. The bank lends me the rest of the money, and then I'm still earning a return on the bank's money as well as mine. And over time, that locked debt interest rate, with inflation and appreciation and everything else, I'm paying that money back with less valuable dollars in the future. So I'm a big fan of that long term. There's a lot of ways to do real estate, and there's a lot of ways, it's a complex subject. So I'm a huge fan, but definitely make sure you do your homework and you're doing it correctly, and then be consistent, right? The more you do at a young age, the better off things will be when you're older. But I'm not a fan of, like, you don't have to sacrifice so much that you can't enjoy life now, right? So you want to be able to enjoy life in the present. So I'm a fan of really kind of grinding it out for 4 or 5 years to get your baseline finances set up. And then it becomes fun. Then you're investing, then you're buying properties, then you're doing whatever. And then, I'm 31 and I'm financially free. Like, if I wanted to right now, I could completely shut everything down, stop working, and I wouldn't have to work again. I'm only working on things that I enjoy. I like buying real estate. It's fun for me. I like hiring people and training them and building a team. It's fun for me. We've locked up 5 or 6 properties this month that we're going to buy some and wholesale some and flip one and hold others. And it's fun, right? But I don't have to do that. I have the freedom to do, focus on what I want to focus on. So that's what you want to get to, where you can focus on what you want, when you want, where you want. And you don't have to do anything if you don't want to, right? People cannot bribe you or force you into doing things you don't believe in or don't want to do. It's a good spot to be, but you have to be consistent. You've got to be willing to grind it out for a little bit and suffer or sacrifice a little bit in order to get to a point where it's like a hamster wheel, or a flywheel. Takes a little bit of effort to get that flywheel moving, but as it spins, it gains momentum, and then once it gets to a point where it doesn't take much to keep it going. It's a big heavy wheel. It's just going on its own momentum. It doesn't take much to keep it going, right? So think of it that way. Be consistent. All right, recommended resources. Yeah, you knew I had to throw that in there. So I wrote this book. You can go to my website, and the PDF is absolutely free, so I'm not trying to sell this thing to you. I actually like how the hard copy looks and feels. I think it turned out really well. It's an OBS guide to military life, how to build wealth, get promoted, and achieve greatness. Another book I recommend is Set for Life by Scott Trench. It's great about finances and real estate. Their Bigger Pockets is the author behind that. The publishing company behind that. They're a real estate forum, biggest one in the world. Set for Life is a great book. Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, is a phenomenal book. A lot of people attribute it to their success and getting started in real estate. How to Invest in Real Estate by Brandon Turner and Josh Dorkin, another Bigger Pockets book. If you're interested in real estate, definitely grab that one. And then Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. I've mentioned that one a few times today. So that one is all about index funds and just letting your money ride. So if you're interested in real estate, How to Invest in Real Estate. If you're interested in index funds, Simple Path to Wealth. Rich Dad Poor Dad is more like mindset around investing. And then Set for Life is like personal finance. No BS Guide is like kind of all things military, everything I wish I'd known. And then last but not least, if you want to join the community, scan this and it'll have links for like our Facebook group, my Instagram, TikTok, yep, got one, YouTube channel, all these free resources, all this free information. You don't need to pay people thousands of dollars to learn this stuff. I learned it through networking and education and podcasts and reading. Command Financial Specialist School, and I'm a licensed real estate agent and a licensed, soon to be a licensed real estate like mortgage broker. So I've gone through these schools, and yeah, I've paid for some of this education, but you totally don't need to do any of that. We are the biggest military real estate investing community in the world, and we're one of the biggest military like financial communities out there, all about building wealth and helping service members, veterans, and their families build wealth through real estate, entrepreneurship, personal finance. And I'm glad that you guys got something out of this. I hope you got something out of this. I thank you for letting me come and present to you. And thank you for taking a look through all of this. This is just basic personal finance. If you want, you can go to my website. You can get all of these slides for free. And you can even get access to the Teachable for like the free, more in-depth on subjects presentation. And then just tons of free content, right? And then go to the Facebook group, ask questions, post around, share around, do whatever. Hope to help you guys out more in the future. So if you got questions, comments, concerns, hit me up. I'm happy to answer them all and happy to answer anything that I haven't already or produce content to help you guys out. So thank you and have a great day.